Welcome to day 57 of reading for 30 minutes every single day for the rest of my life. Tonight we have The Fellowship of the Ring. Boom. And we got 30 minutes starting right now. We are at the bottom of page 155. 30 minutes starting now. Let's go. Day 57. The air was growing very warm again. The hobbits ran for about a while on the grass, as he told them. Then they lay basking in the sun with the delight of those that have been wafted suddenly from the bitter winter to a friendly clime, or of people that, after being long ill and bedridden, wake one day to find that they are unexpectedly well, and the day is again full of promise. By the time that Tom returned, they were feeling strong and hungry. He reappeared, hat first, over the brow of the hill, and behind them came an obedient line, 6 ponies, their own 5 and one more. The last was plainly old Fatty Lumpkin. He was larger, stronger, fatter, and older than their own ponies. Mary, to whom the others belonged, had not, in fact, given them any such names, but they answered to the new names that Tom had given them for the rest of their lives. Tom called them one by one, and they climbed over the brow and stood in line. Then Tom bowed to the hobbits. "Here are your ponies now," he said. "They've more sense, in some ways, than you wandering habits have. More sense in their noses, for they sniff danger ahead when you can which you walk right into. And if they run to save themselves, then they run the right way. You must forgive them all. For though their hearts are faithful, to face fear of borrow ways is not what they were made for. See, here they come again, bringing all their burdens." Mary, Sam, and Pippin now clothed themselves in spare garments from their packs, and they soon felt too hot, for they were obliged to put on some sort of thicker and warmer things that they had brought against the oncoming of winter. "Where does that other old animal, that Fatty Lumpkin, come from?" asked Frodo. "He's mine," said Tom. "My four-legged friend, though I seldom ride him, and he wanders often far, free upon the hillsides. When your ponies stayed with me, they got to know my Lumpkin, and they smelt him in the right way, and quickly ran to meet him. I thought he'd look for them, and with his words of wisdom take all their fear away. But now, my jolly Lumpkin, old Tom's going to ride." "Hey, he's coming with you," just to set out on the road, so he needs a pony. For you cannot easily talk to hobbits that are riding, when you're on your own legs trying to trot beside them. The hobbits were delighted to hear this, and thanked Tom many times, but he laughed, and said that they were so good at losing themselves that he would not feel happy till he had seen them safe over the borders of his land. "I've got things to do," he said. "I'm making my singing, my talking, and my walking, and my watching all of the country. Tom can't be always near to open doors and willow cracks. Tom has his house to mind, and Goldberry is waiting. It was still fairly early by the sun, something between 9 and 10, and the hobbits turned their minds to food. Their last meal had been lunch beside the Standing Stone the day before. They breakfasted now off the remainder of Tom's provisions, meant for their supper, with additions that Tom had brought with him. It was not a large meal, considering hobbits and the circumstances, but they felt much better for it. While they were eating, Tom went up to the mound and looked through the treasures. Most of what he made into a pile that glistened and sparkled on the grass. He bade them lie there, free to all finders, birds, beasts, elves, or men, and all kindly creatures. For so the spell of the mound should be broken and scattered, and no wight ever come back to it. He chose for himself from the pile a brooch set with blue stones, many shaded like flax flowers or the wings of blue butterflies. He looked at it, as if stirred by some memory, shaking his head and saying at last, "Here is a pretty toy for Tom and for his lady. Fair was she who long ago wore this on her shoulder. Goldberry shall wear it now, and we will not forget her." For each of the hobbits he chose a dagger, long-leafed shaped and keen, of marvelous workmanship, damasked with serpent forms in red and gold. They gleamed as he drew from them their black sheaths. black sheaths, wrought of some strange metal, light and strong, and set with many fiery stones. Whether by some virtue in these sheaths or because of the spell that lay on the mound, the blades seem untouched by time, untrusted, sharp, glittering in the sun. Old knives are long enough as swords for hobbit people, he said. Sharp blades are good to have. If shire folk go walking east, south, or far away into dark and danger, then he told them that these blades were forged many long years ago by men of Westernese. They were foes of the Dark Lord, but they were overcome by the evil of the Cardum of the land of Angmar. Few now remember them, Tom murmured. Yet still some go wandering, sons of forgotten kings walking in loneliness, guarding from evil folks that are heedless. The hobbits did not understand his words, but as he spoke they had a vision as if it were a great expanse of years behind them, like a vast shadowy plain over which they were strode shapes of men, tall and grim with bright swords. And last came one with a star on his brow. Then the vision faded, and they were back in the sunlit world. It was time to start again. They made ready, packing their bags and lading their ponies. Their new weapons they hung on their leather belts under their jackets, feeling them awkward and wondering if they were to be any of use. Fighting had not been occurred to any of them, as one of the adventures in their flight would land them. At last they set off. They led their ponies down the hill, and mounting they trotted quickly along the valley. They looked back and saw the top of the old mound in the hill, and from its sunlight the gold hill went up like a yellow flame. Then they turned a shoulder of the downs, and it was hidden from view. Though Frodo looked about him on every side, he saw no sign of the great stones standing like a gate. And therefore long they came to the northern gap and rode swiftly through, and the land fell away before them. It was a merry journey with Tom Bombadil trotting gaily beside them, or before them, on Fatty Lumpkin, who could move much faster than his girth promised. Tom sang most of the time, but it was chiefly nonsense, or perhaps a strange language unknown to the hobbits, an ancient language whose words were mainly those of wonder and delight. They went forward steadily, and they soon saw that the road was further away than they had imagined. Even without a fog, their sleep at midday would have prevented them from reaching it until after nightfall on the day before. The dark line that they had seen was not a line of trees, but a line of bushes growing on the edges of a deep dike with a steep wall on the further side. Tom said that it had once been the boundary of a kingdom, but a very long time ago he seemed to remember something sad about it, and would not say much. They climbed down and out of the dike and through a gap in the wall, and then Tom turned due north, and they had been bearing somewhat to the west. The land was now open and fairly level, and they quickened their pace, but the sun was already sinking low when they saw a line of tall trees ahead, and they knew what they had come back to the road right after unexpected adventures. They galloped their ponies over the last furlongs, and halted under the long shadows of the trees. They were on the top of a sloping bank, and the road, now dim as evening drew on, wound away below them. At this point it ran nearly away from southwest to northeast, and on their right it fell quickly down into a wide hollow. It was rutted, and many signs of the recent heavy rain. There were pools and potholes full of water. They rode down the bank and looked up and down. There was nothing to be seen. Well, here we are again at last, said Frodo. I suppose we haven't lost more than 2 days by my short cut through the forest. But perhaps the delay will prove useful. It may have put them off our trail. The others looked at him. The shadow of the fear of the Black Riders came suddenly over them again. Ever since they had entered the forest, they had thought chiefly of getting back to the road. Only now it lay beneath their feet did they remember the danger which pursued them, and was more than likely to be lying in wait for them upon the road itself. They looked anxiously back towards the setting sun, and the road was brown and empty. Do you think, asked Pippin hesitantly, do you think we may be pursued tonight? Pursued tonight? No, I hope not. I hope not tonight, answered Tom Bombadil, nor perhaps the next day, but do not trust my guess, for I cannot tell for certain. Out east my knowledge fails. Tom is not master of riders from the Black Land far beyond his country. All the same, the hobbits wished he was coming with them. They felt that he would not know how to deal with black riders if anyone did. They would soon now be going forward into lands wholly strange to them, and beyond all the most vague and distant legends of the Shire. And in the gathering twilight they longed for home. A deep loneliness and sense of loss was on them. They stood silent, reluctant to make the final parting, and only slowly became aware that Tom was wishing them farewell and sending them to have good heart and to ride on till dark without halting. Tom will give you good advice. Till this day is over, after your own luck must go with you and guide you. 4 miles along the road you'll come upon a village, Bree under Bree Hill, with doors looking westward. There you'll find an old inn that is called the Prancing Pony. Barlaman Butterbur is the worthy keeper. There you can stay the night, and afterwards the morning will speed up your way. Behold, but wary. Be bold, but wary. Keep up your merry hearts, and ride to meet your fortune. They bagged him to come at least as far as the inn and drink once more with them, but he laughed and refused, saying, Tom's country ends here. He will not pass the borders. Tom has his mind, and Goldberry is waiting. Then he turned, tossed up his hat, leaned up Lumpkin's back, and rode over the bank and away, singing into the dusk. The hobbits climbed up and watched him until he was out of sight. I am sorry to take leave of Master Bambadil, said Sam. He's a caution and no mistake. I reckon we may go a good deal further and see naught better, nor queerer. But I won't deny I'll be glad to see this prancing pony he spoke of. I hope it'll be like the Green Dragon away back home. What sort of folk are they in Bree? There are hobbits in Bree, said Mary, as well as big folk. I dare say it will be homelike enough. The pony is a good inn by all accounts. My people ride out there now and again. It may be all we could wish, said Frodo, but it is outside the Shire all the same. Don't make yourselves too much at home. Please remember, all of you, that the name of Baggins must not be mentioned. I am Mr. Underhill, if any name must be given. Now they mounted their ponies and rode off silently into the evening. Darkness came down quickly as they plodded slowly downhill and up again, until at last they saw lights twinkling some distance ahead. Before them rose Bree Hill, barring the way, a dark mass against misty stars, and under its western flank nestled a large village. Toward it they now hurried, desiring to find a fire and a door between them and the night. Chapter 9. At the Sign of the Prancing Pony. Bree was the chief village of the Bree land, a small inhabited region, like an island in the empty land round about. Beside Tree itself there was a staddle on either side of the hill. Combe in a deep valley a little further eastward, in Arkecht, on the edge of the Chetwood. Lying round Bree Hill and the villages were a small country of fields and tamed woodland only a few miles broad. The men of Bree were brown-haired, broad, and rather short, but they were more friendly and familiar with hobbits. Dwarves and elves and other inhabitants of the world about them then was or is usual with big people. According to their own tales, they were the original inhabitants and were the descendants of the first man that ever wandered into the west of the middle world. Few had survived the turmoils of the elder days, but when the kings returned again over the great sea, they had found the Bree men still there, and they were still there now, when the memory of the old kings faded into the grass. In those days no other men had settled dwelling so far west or within 100 leagues of the Shire, but in the wild lands beyond Bree there were mysterious wanderers. The Bree folk called them rangers, and knew nothing of their origin. They were taller and darker than the men of Bree, and were believed to have strange powers in sight and hearing, and to understand the languages of beasts and birds. They roamed at will southwards, and eastwards, even as far as the misty mountains, but they were now few and rarely seen. When they appeared, they brought news from afar, and told strange forgotten tales which were eagerly listened to, but the Bree folk did not make friends of them. There were also many families of hobbits in the Bree land, and they claimed to have the oldest settlements of hobbits in the world, and that was founded long before even the Brandywine was crossed and the Shire colonized. They lived mostly in Staddle. Through there were some in Bree itself, especially on the higher slopes of the hill, above the house of the men. The big folk and the little folk, as they called one another, were on friendly terms, minding their own affairs in their own ways. but both rightly regarding themselves as necessary parts of the Bree folk. Nowhere else in the world was this peculiar but excellent arrangement to be found. The Bree folk, big and little, did not themselves travel much, and the affairs of the four villages were their chief concern. Occasionally, the hobbits of Bree went as far as Buckland, or the East Farthing, but though their little land was not much further than the day's riding east of the Brandywine Bridge, the hobbits of the Shire now seldom visited it. An occasional Bucklander or adventurous took would come out of the inn for a night or two, but even that was becoming less and less usual. The Shire hobbits referred to those of Bree and to any of those that lived beyond the borders as outsiders, and they took very interest in them, considering them dull and uncouth. There were probably many more outsiders scattered about in the west of the world in those days than the people of the Shire imagined. Some, doubtless, were no better than tramps, ready to dig a hole in any bank and stay only as long as it suited them. But in the Bree land, at any rate, the hobbits were decent and prosperous, and no more rustic. But in the Bree land, at any rate, the hobbits were decent and prosperous, and no more rustic than most of their distant relatives inside. It was not yet forgotten that there had been a time when there was much coming and going between the Shire and Bree. There was Bree blood in the Brandybucks, by all accounts. Damn. I'm gonna turn my heater off real quick. 1 second. I don't know why I'm a little itchy. I'm a little itchy everywhere. Okay. Here we are. The village of Bree had some hundred stone houses of the big folk, mostly above the road, nestling on the hillside, with windows looking west. On that side, running in more than half of a circle from the hill and back to it, there was a deep dike with a thick hedge of the inner side, over the road crossed by a causeway. Where it pierced the hedge, it was barred by a great gate. There was another gate in the southern corner where the road ran out of the village. The gates were closed at nightfall, but inside of them were small lodges for gatekeepers. Taking my socks off. I'm going to read in my head now. You on this motherfucker.
They can't stop them on a fucking Tuesday.
That was 30 minutes. And that was day 57. We're at the top of page 168. See y'all in day 58. Let's get it. Let's go.